Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
Today's guest is a young entrepreneur, a sustainable thinker, student, and innovator. He's a co-founder of the XYZ Playground. Please welcome to the show, Joe Neft. Tell us a bit about yourself. Who are you and how do you connect the dots in your life in innovation and in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, first of all, Jens. I'm Joe, currently located here in Copenhagen, but originally German, and moved here a couple of years ago to do my master in actually innovation and entrepreneurship. So after my bachelor's, actually, that I did in a very common classic business type of way. That was the turning point for me where it went a bit like, okay, do I want to continue to keep up the status quo of what's currently happening in business, or do I want to actually be part of thinking or imagining what the future could look like? And then it was a lot about thinking, do I change paths completely and go into a more creative direction? Or do I find something in the realm of business where, I can just kind of build on top of what I've already had? And that's how I then ended up with my master that I did here. Finished this summer, so I'm the Corona year in that sense. So it was a perfect timing kind of to take all those learnings that I had and put them into action, because I would have never imagined that I'd be at that point now that I'm 25. If I look back 5 years ago, if I would have imagined what is it to be 25 and what would I be doing?
Where have you been 5 years ago?
5 years ago, I've been in my bachelor's and probably just returned from Spain, where I did an Erasmus. So still I studied international business. So still very much in this whole idea of hey, I'm gonna do a big career afterwards and make money. And then I did an internship the year afterwards. And I remember I've been in a startup in Berlin interning as business developer. And there was this guy who was, I think, 24 at that time or 25. And I was and also interning. And I thought, wow, how are you still interning and not you're 25, you're so old, how are you not have accomplished more in your life? That was in my head. And then I thought with 25, I've been 3 years into a job or something like that. And, and then you never know what happens really. And so now I'm in a completely different mindset than I was back then.
Yeah. But where did you study in Germany?
I studied in Tübingen. Yeah. It was a very a nice student city, but very old school in the rest of it. Yeah.
For those listeners who don't know where Tübingen is, where is Tübingen in Germany?
All right. Tübingen. So it's south of Germany, south of Stuttgart, so Baden-Württemberg, the Schwabenländer. That doesn't tell English-speaking people anything, but yeah, that's where I went for my studies.
Yeah, cool. So now you're in Copenhagen. And you work with sustainability, you work with a couple of other topics. Tell us about that. What's going on? Yeah,
exactly. So currently I'm involved in 3 projects that are, actually there's a 4th one coming up, but 3 projects at the moment that I spend my time on. And the one part is I'm part of a vertical farming project here in Copenhagen that focuses on making that technology open source, available for everyone. And kind of the whole idea behind that is that even though it's been around for quite a while, it's still very much niche and the people in the European market, at least, are very like closed off. Like they don't communicate a lot. They don't really. They're like scared. Like that's their selling point a bit. Like, oh, we have that technology, or we built our system, and now we want to sell the system, and we don't want to have other people know about it, because then kind of our whole business model doesn't work anymore. And our approach is more like we want to have it, like the technology itself is not what makes it, or like the system itself are not what makes it so great, but actually by giving access to anyone really and teaching people how that could be used will enable more innovative ideas or more projects coming out of it. Kind of like the internet as well. Like instead of making that available for everyone, how can we make that with vertical farming, like the internet of foods somehow? Yeah, so that's the one current project I'm involved with, and then I'm working on an own platform business that has to do with like circularity within the fashion industry. And the whole background, how that came about is pretty much that we all kind of know that the fashion industry is one of the biggest polluter, and a lot of clothes end up in landfills each day, actually. And especially during Corona now, that was a big issue for like fast fashion houses, that they had a ton of stock that they had to get rid of, and they didn't really know what to do with the surplus fashion. And the whole platform would work as some sort of online closet that people can tap into. And that would be built out of surplus fashion, but also of donated fashion from others. And then you can you have this whole system, what you have already with food boxes, where you can choose items that you can wear for a while. You get a box, and then that returns into the closet itself. So bringing more circularity into the fashion industry. That's very early stage. So we're conceptualizing that at the moment. But that's one project to move forward. And then, the XYZ playground that, we are in a way involved all in is, this great idea really of how can leaders of today learn from the leaders of tomorrow. And where for me really the value comes in of, we're at the point, I think now in time, where we see that a lot of action is needed, and a lot of the world is too complex, or the world is complex in the sense that we need to face that complexity together, especially thinking about the generation that's coming up. And there's a lot of like learning potential both ways, from learning from the ones who are already in power and those who are coming up next. That's like a short maybe rundown of what I'm currently involved with.
The sustainability business, the circularity business sounds really interesting. I need to connect you. I need to remember that there. I know a guy who is. Have you heard about the app Stupid Fit?
No, I have not actually.
He's a guy I know and work with as well, and he's in Copenhagen, which is quite funny. Now we'll talk to him today. So he has built an app where it's about fashion as well, and he's very much as well into sustainability. So that might be an opportunity to connect to him as well.
Well, definitely. Amazing. And it's called Stupid Fit.
Yeah. Stupid Fit or Stupid Fits, I'm not sure, with an S. But it's definitely worth to look into it. Interesting business model and interesting ways of thinking from him.
Yeah, I think sustainability is just such a, like, I know it sounds a bit like our generation buzzword that we love to throw around. But I think that especially when you start new businesses these days, I think that's the foundation you really have to go from.
Yeah.
And then it's way more difficult if you're an established business that has not had that as a groundwork and now needs to switch to that. So I think any business these days that starts off that doesn't consider factors that tie into it, then yeah, I think that's just very outdated and won't work.
Yeah, and working with a lot of businesses for me that's a no-brainer. That's like whatever you do that need to be in. If that's not considered, then you shouldn't do business long term. Yeah. So I 100% agree. It's a no-brainer. That's why for me, what I'm realizing, especially working with you guys, is like I'm even not considering that as something special, because for me it's just baked in. But then knowing the other world, like from a corporate perspective, it's not normal that this is baked in. So it's still something which I believe we as business people establishing businesses need to push a bit more, that this is like on the forefront of how other corporates see it as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so much about like a mindset shift that also has to happen. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and also like discussing openly what sustainability means for people, because it's a social, like the term isn't like so well defined sometimes, or it means something else for different people. So then also being on the same page of what that means going forward is definitely a challenge in itself.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's also, I have been living abroad like you as well. It's like in different cultures is even perceived differently. And I was head of sustainability for a large corporation in Russia, which you can imagine is completely different perspective than doing the same job talking about sustainability in Denmark or in Germany or in Sweden or somewhere here. And I think that's also a challenge going forward, especially with the digitalization where we are. And it's like, how do we approach these things from a global perspective? Because we still have a long way to go when it comes to climate change and all these topics.
Yeah, and it gets actually quite nitty gritty sometimes. Like last year, I worked with Danfoss on we developed a sustainability report on electric mobility in cities. And it was about how can we achieve clean air in cities by switching to e-mobility, basically. And then on a high level, when we looked at it, we were like, oh, that's like a no-brainer, maybe, like, more e-bikes, e-cars, whatever, will lead to less combustion engines in the city, so also less congestion in the city. So that's great. So sustainability wise, that is maybe like great to go for. But then when you actually dive deeper into the topic and look into where does the energy come from that these cars are using into the production of the cars itself, and then you dig stuff up like child labor and like all of this, where you go, well, maybe that's actually not where we want to go. And the whole idea of while yes, it's good in like the end result might lead to cleaner air in a certain way, all the other points that are not considered, will that actually like impact the whole world into like moving into the right direction? That's what I'm like, we're still on this like hype of e-mobility, and we have to kind of drive that forward. And that's why I'm sometimes a bit scared, or like a bit more reluctant to like jump on hypes when it comes to, well, is that actually the right direction that we want to go? And for example, in like with e-mobility, it's probably not going like changing how we are just e-mobility, but actually rethinking of maybe we should lower our transport and go more towards micro transport, right? Or how do we build cities that people don't have to use their cars? Or how like where do we start there maybe? And
agree. For me, it's that's why I'm so much into the business topic, because I'm a strong believer that the language of business enables things differently. So like, how can you impact the world with doing something good, but changing the system while you do it? because like you said, it's like, it's not just, hey, we are now switching from a diesel car to an electrical car. You need to take a step back and look at the total chain, at the total system, and need to change that to be long-term sustainable. And that's the challenge with especially large corporations. Just switching that means they're losing money, and then most probably they will not do it, or at least not fast.
Yeah, I think it is such a big topic in that sense. And I think actually that big corporates are still kind of like, they have such a power and they have such an influence if they put something out, so that it would be like, they really have to also step into the game, because solutions are like, there are a lot of solutions out there that are super sustainable, but they're just not on the big scale known, or like they're not sufficiently funded, let's say, or there's just the economic power, or like the drive for money is still super strong in so that change in mind hasn't happened yet. But it's also, I think it's scary, and it's also a bit like this, you don't know what's going to happen really. I don't think there's a written story behind it. Like, we've been on this, like, I think there were different stories in time that people got told of how life works best. And like, it used to be maybe some sort of, after World War II, let's say, there was like communism and capitalism as like those two stories that were told, like what would work, and then communism didn't work, and then it was like, okay, capitalism, that's the way to move forward. Like, there's nothing else like that has survived, or like we've proven over history that didn't work. So let's go for the capitalism route, and that has like accelerated and worked in a lot of ways. But I think we're now at a point where we have to rethink a bit this system, and a lot of people, or I think everyone is kind of thinking about, okay, what's the next story now? Because everything else we kind of discarded because it didn't work, and now we're left with this the capitalism approach, which is and then now we need to rethink that. And I think that's what COVID showed nicely as well, is we can't really plan, like, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, but COVID really pushed for, we have to just do something, because we're in such a difficult situation now, and that maybe sparks or gives more energy also now to do transitions in other areas, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you see you're venturing in the entrepreneurship world after you have studied? So how do you see the world from an entrepreneur perspective, or especially young entrepreneur?
I have to say, it's something that, I mean, I'm not nowhere near an expert in that field, and it's something that I'm like still exploring each day when it comes to it. So I've my studies have been for I finished them this year, so I've been within that field for, let's say, a little bit more than 2 years plus. And I wasn't even sure 100% if I always liked the idea of doing something on my own, or like moving that forward, but at the same time it's always it's scary as well. And then I thought, well, maybe, it's also nice to just have a job and work and, be a bit have that security. Why not? I'm still that was for me a lot of thinking actually that I'm still a bit dabbling obviously as well. But because of Corona and the situation that we have, it pushed me actually to be well, the situation that I'm in doesn't allow me now to work in an area where I would like to work. And so why not just starting something on my own, or why not just going for it and being driven more on what do I want to do, and then trying to connect with people who are on the same path. And then I'm a bit privileged here, obviously, in Denmark, because of the system, that I don't have to think about the financial part so much. So that really for me now, that's how I like I am in that situation now where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this out and I'm gonna go for it, and I don't know what's gonna happen, and I don't know if any of this will be fruitful, but the only like it's a scary roller coaster ride, and it's stressful at times, and sometimes you achieve a little bit, and then that makes you kind of continue forward, and then a lot of times you go, why am I doing this? Maybe I should just, and then you see like a job post, you're like, I should just maybe I should just go for that,
Yeah.
and then continue with that. So it's it's an, how do you say, like I'm still figuring out as I go.
Yeah. But one thing I can tell you, being in this game now for 2 years at least on my own, it will stay like this. I mean, I have decided for myself I will not go back into a corporation because I like the freedom, but it's like that you don't know what's happening in the future, and you don't really know what all your ideas will bring. That's a constant thing, at least for me. So that's where I as well learned for myself. That's like, it's the best university. It's the university of entrepreneurship, where you basically learn it while doing it. So you can take all the nice theories you have learned in the past, and then look into, okay, how does it really work? Like, everyone speaks about prototyping. How does it work? And then you're scared in doing it. Like we discussed before we started recording, is like, oh, yeah, but it doesn't feel like I would like to do that. It need to be perfect, or it need to be at least on a level that I'm comfortable in sharing it.
Yeah, and then for me, where I'm also sometimes like stuck with, like, for example, the vertical farming part, is that I've been so academic most of my life, where it's all about, well, you read about theories and you do work a bit for companies, or you consult, but then you always have people who actually do the work. And I'm actually at the moment really, like, I like doing the actual work right now as well. In the vertical farm, for example, it's very slow, sometimes very frustrating as well, where we, like, I'm not an engineer, but we have engineers there as well, where we like kind of tweak, or we drill holes in like certain ways, and we try to adjust things, and we have a lot of tape where we glue things together and see if that works. And then we have a couple of rounds to see, and then it's still leaking in certain areas, and we try to automate things. And it's very, like, in my mind, I was like, well, there has to be something developed already, or there needs to be something what we can use to make this better. But it's really about just getting your hands dirty and then doing the work itself. And that's also exciting in its own part. And then it gives me somehow also more, like, it fulfills me or gives me more meaning than I think just consulting based on just theories that I read. And then especially in business, I think it's a lot about like testing, and there's a lot changing so quickly that I think a lot of stuff you can't apply it as easily anymore. Or you can talk about it easily, but when it comes to actual implementation, it becomes more nuanced or more difficult.
Yeah. Now, I've had, when I was working on construction sites in my early career steps, I had the German saying, so you will get it straight away. It was a saying that one of my colleagues always said, the work will show you the way, or the work will show you the journey, which is very much entrepreneurship way of thinking. It's like, you do stuff, and while you do it, you will figure it out. If you just think it through, it will not work. So it's basically, you need to do it to be able to understand what you need to do next. That's always a fun perspective, and I still see that every day in what I'm doing. It's quite interesting. So going back to the XYZ playground part, how do you see XYZ, or how do you define XYZ playground? What is it for you?
For me, the XYZ is so far mostly this vision to say, okay, we wanna change the world in a way by bringing together the different generations of X, Y, and Z that are currently in the workforce or coming into it. And having this open dialogue and discussion of how do we shape the world of tomorrow coming from a business perspective. And like coming back of what you said as well, with that it is, I agree, let's say 80% with that it's businesses that have a lot of power in making this change and moving it forward, just because of the setup that businesses work. They can just like work faster than politics, for example, in a lot of ways. And that's why, and more businesses see also that they have to take up that role, and it's not only about selling products or making money in that sense. And that's really about how can we share knowledge amongst different actors and bridging this generational gap that exists to accelerate maybe the switch from there are already great solutions out there that we just maybe have to look into and accelerate them through a collaborative approach. And that's a bit what I see where I would love the XYZ playground to go. And that's something now that needs to be tested a bit. Okay, how can we make the shift? And I think it starts with like having one, like you start with one person, and then you start small basically, and then you hope to create the snowball effect at a certain point where it's really about like, well, we do one job good, and then the next one comes in, and then you go from there.
So it's like you said, it's two perspectives. One, it's a younger generation, and it's an older or an experienced generation.
Exactly.
What do you think can the older generation learn from the younger generation?
I think that's the great part of having those two generations, and that's also how mentorship ideally works. It's not about and the whole idea is also not that we go and we tell them that's how you're supposed to do it because we know, and at the same time it shouldn't be, well, that's how you're supposed to do it because I've been working in that company for so and so long. But it's more really about the exchange of experience. And I think we all have unique experience in ourselves from the background where we come from, even within our own generation. But it has to, the whole idea of doing it cross generations is to just the point that, well, we're not in the, like mostly the younger generation is not in the position of power as much as the older generation to move something forward or to change it maybe. Obviously that exists as well, but I think that for me is the whole point of getting fresh insights or just picking our brains on how we see certain challenges. And it can be either way. Like it's like there are a lot of I'm not saying that the older generation is necessarily completely off of where we go. So that doesn't even have to be about that. I think it all is something that develops within the conversation that you have that happens, and it's not something that's so much predefined probably where we can say, well, that will be the outcome, but just creating a medium where you build that connection and you talk about it. That's already the value in itself.
Yeah. If you would pitch that to a younger person, what could a younger person learn from the older or more experienced generation?
I think there's always a lot of interesting insights of just having someone live like having actual raw experience in something. You can't take that away, and there's always something to take with it. And then the great part about that is that enables younger people to, in a way, maybe also lower the fear that they have of how does the actual world works. I remember before I had my first proper job, for me, it was somehow sort of way also like this fantasy world where I thought everything, like they're all so super smart and they have it all figured out and that's how it works. And then I have no idea and I'm just trying to learn what they're doing. And then when I started working, especially interestingly in bigger corporations, I was a bit even shocked how non-evolved, or like how when you read the news or hear about what's already possible, how not implemented that is in certain, like in that particular bigger corporate that I worked in. And that they also just boil with water sometimes. And then it's, and that kind of, humbles you, and then it makes it more human in that sense. So it's just, and then what it does at the same time, it also sparks, like when an older person tells about their experience and you're a younger person that works or has so far only like had university or just a couple of internships, it also enables you to be like, oh, what you said, that's interesting. Why did you do it that way? Or why didn't you, we just learned this, or have you thought about that? And is that something you considered as well? You know, just like those like you connect dots that you wouldn't maybe think of before existed. That's what I hope at least this can create.
Yeah, definitely cool. I'm really looking forward to see where this is evolving. So I would like to get your perspective. Why did you choose to be part of this group and this movement? What do you think you want to get out of that?
Like one thing that really, for me, where I thought that was unique is not so much maybe necessarily like while I think the whole idea and the mission that we want to accomplish is cool in itself. The great part, and that's thanks to you really also, is that this, like bringing together already like the group that we have, like having this very like diverse and interesting people from all around the globe a bit joining together on that mission. And that gave me so much, like I thought that was just so cool already to be like, well, if we can like connect across borders on a common goal that we agree on, and there's still a lot of like, well, the way we work or the way we communicate is still different, but the way that we think in the sense like we want to bring that forward, that just gave me like, well, there must be more people out there that are also like that, and there are more people who want to push forward, and you don't just live in your own circle. It spans really around across countries, and that like I just want to be part of that. And then like that for me was already like, yeah, that's the exciting part. At the same time, like you don't know where it goes, but because we're all involved, it will go somewhere. And that was, I think, the main selling point, because it might still switch a bit direction where we go, because that's still to be seen, and we like you iterate on it and see where it goes. But the team itself, I think that was the selling point to me.
It's quite interesting. I was talking to Lena, who is also co-founder, the other day, and had her on the show, and she was mentioning similar things. Where it's like, it's so awesome to be with people together who are from different parts of the continent and different parts of the world and have completely different backgrounds, interesting stories. But then she was also saying and reflecting, but I've never met them in person. So that's also a little bit of weird, which maybe a year ago before the whole pandemic started, that's like, yeah, let's figure out the possibility to meet in person to get something started. But this is kind of only online until now, at least, and most probably the next half year, at least, due to the pandemic. And even to the level, like if you take Lena as an example, the two of you are like, I don't know, 50 kilometers apart, different countries, but it's fairly close together. You could have met up easily if there would not be the pandemic. It's quite interesting.
Actually, I thought about that the other day as well, because in a way I feel I've known these people for so long, but then when I talk to someone about it and they ask me, but what has that person, but who is that person? Then I'm sometimes like, oh, I actually don't know 100%. Like so that's also something where I sometimes forgot actually, well, we actually don't know each other that well. We've never seen each other live. And that's true. And that brings new challenges with it as well. But it is also like, it shows also that it is possible as well to connect, and then with the technology that we have these days to, and then especially during the pandemic to, make something happen and to connect with people.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities we have with that project, or even business already. What if we take this really to, and we are a global team, we are parts of different worlds, but it's still a small team, it's 10 people or 12. What if we widen that group and connect even more people with even more diverse background going forward? That will be an interesting experiment, because you will definitely not be able to meet everyone. I mean, like Lena and you and some others who are living close to you, that's definitely easy possible. But like taking the guys from South Africa up, I mean, that's like, I don't know, 3-week journey to connect in person, and fairly expensive.
That's so true. But like you said as well, we just had yesterday, like a friend of mine had her birthday, and we like now because of Corona, she couldn't do it physically, so we were all online and like in a meeting room, but we were all from different places. And then she said that as well. The nice part was actually that everyone that she wanted to have on her birthday was actually there, which in real life never happened.
Yeah,
because
true.
Well, then just a couple of people would come that are there, but then you wouldn't get 10 people on a phone call in it as well. And this time everyone was there that you wanted to have there, and it was a mess as well. We were trying to sing, and that didn't like synchronize properly, but it was so fun and it was really nice. And I think that's the great part of the online world.
Moving a little bit from entrepreneurship towards innovation. So how do you define innovation? How do you see innovation evolving?
Yeah, that's also like next to sustainability, innovation is also one of those great buzzwords that everyone has a bit different opinions on what it means. For me, innovation is, it is not necessarily something new in the sense of like, it's not just something new that comes out, but it is, it changes the way how we conduct our life, and then we can go back how it was before. That's for me the innovation level that you want to reach. Like if you introduce something that's so like it changes the way how we conduct ourselves in our life. So something that we have with the phone or even the internet, it's like we can't even think back, or we can't even go back to how it was before. Like that doesn't, like it changed completely the way we behave in our daily life. That's for me is is innovation. There are obviously different types of definitions then in between, like when you have more incrementally innovative things where you just improve on something that's already existing a bit. But the true innovation for me is that's like the holy grail of innovation for me, is to change the way of how people behave in a positive way, like in a good way, obviously. Mm-hmm. That's for me innovation.
It's quite funny when you say with mobile phones. I still remember the time without mobile phone. Like my whole school time was without the mobile phone. And most probably you had the phone, at least in the high school afterwards. Yeah. Just guessing.
Yeah, I'm also still in that generation that didn't have it from day one, but it was, but even like when I go back, or when I just think the other day I looked up when the first iPhone or something came out, like the first smartphone, and it's not that long ago, but in my head I was just like, what?
Forever.
And that's forever. I cannot imagine it not being there, kind of. And that's that baffles me sometimes. Some things haven't been around for that long, but they've changed completely how we behave these days, or how we how we act as humans.
And that's just funny if we compare the two of us. When I was in your age, the smartphone wasn't there, at least not widely spread. So it was like the old, at least in my experience, the old Nokia phones where you do text messages with typing 5 times #1, 5 times something, and getting text messages out. And that's not that long ago.
It's like when you when you went to school also, and there was no internet where you can look up stuff, right? So you had to that's also something like
my whole school life was without digital. There was no digital. We have had a computer course, but the computer course was only to learn like 10 finger typing. That was the computer course. So nothing else, zero, no computers, nothing. Even at home, we didn't have any computers.
The 10 finger is so funny because I remember that my mom was really adamant about me learning the 10 finger thing, because she's like, that's going to be so important later, that you're able to like write correctly and like be fast and efficient about it. And I never I did a course where you had to like write different words just to get your fingers, but and it's so funny when you like when I think back now about this, that we thought that that's going to be really important.
But in a way it is. If you take, like, I coming from a large corporations, I have had so many people who are a little bit more senior than I am. They're typing emails like this. And then when you think like how many emails you process in a management position, like, holy cow, I don't want to know how much they spend in writing emails just with that system.
That's true.
Then I was having Stuart the other day on the show, who is from Silicon Valley. Like, he always talks like voice will be the next big thing. And I think this rumors or the discussion on voice is already a couple of years now. But I think if you take my daughter, which is 3 years right now, she will not learn 10 fingers writing anymore. She will just talk to the computers. Like, if you take maybe when she's 10, which is 7 years from now, in 7 years, there will be so much different things that she will not need to type anymore, I guess. Maybe due to history, she has to, because of German school system.
Yeah, that's another whole topic. Yeah. But that's interesting that you mentioned voice. Like, what's your like take on, not maybe necessarily voice, but the whole, because we say a lot that innovation is very much driven by technology, and I think that's mostly true. But I also see that we have reached this point where there's more and more new stuff coming out technological wise where I'm not sure so much if it actually improves our life as humans, like where we go like, okay, this is actually making my life more like connecting, more fulfilling, more happy or whatsoever, but rather it makes it more and more efficient, maybe, or more less dependent on other humans. But is that something that I want to like go for actually? And then at the same time is this whole, are we able to like speed up also the social side on it, on like innovating our minds and or our behaviors on the way everything else around us speeds up?
Yeah.
I don't know what your take is on that.
The tricky thing, if you take us as humans, we're not evolving as fast as technology. We're still the same human from a structural perspective and so on, like a couple of 100 years ago. There was no phone, there was no technology in that sense. And that's why it's so hard. I mean, I think there will be a lot of changes coming, because a lot of things are designed in a way that they are making you addicted to something. And if you've seen the Netflix series, how is it called?
The Social Dilemma.
Yeah. Then you get a perspective on that. But on the other hand, I mean, I'm using, if you take social media, a lot because it's part of my business as well to support that. But I think that there will be a lot of changes coming in the future, because you see, like they're discussing that they want to kind of close Pandora's box a little bit and don't give the big social media platforms too much power and so on. But in general, I think what we need to learn is like how to use. I mean, it's just a tool. You should still you should, and you have to still think things through. You need to evolve with your ways of thinking while using it as a tool. And I think that's maybe as well fitting to the XYZ playground perspective. It's different. It's like if you take my parents, myself, and most probably you and younger people, it's people using the things differently, technology. It's like I'm in the age of extreme addiction on all these topics. It's like a lot of people in my age are really into this because we didn't have it from the beginning, so we are kind of trying to figure it out. That it will be an interesting way in following it, what's happening with technology. But I guess it will also change that, because for me it's like more the application of technology and how you can use it and to do something good in the world. That's for me is the innovation topic where I'm interested in, rather than, hey, that's the new thing which is 20 times faster than the old thing, which is of course helping things. But for me it's not about that. It's more about, if we go back to voice, how can voice interfaces enable us to do things better, which is then making bigger impact in the world and helping us to be more human again. I think that's I think such like nicely put with the technology as an enabler, that it should enable us to become better humans and connect more. And I think on a large scale, that's what it also still does. But you see more trends, I think, that where you kind of like question if that's actually still like what's happening. And for the younger generation, I think they don't know how it is without it, or like they don't know, like they grow up on it. And then you just hear like funny stories of like plastic surgeries that exist now, where young kids want to look like their filters on Snapchat, and you go like, really? Is that now what's happening? And that's, or like the whole thing with TikTok also, where you kind of create this, you give so much power to young people, you make them so addicted to very like, where you empower them to become, let's say, a TikTok dancer, but because you gain so many followers and you can make money with it, and then all of a sudden this 14-year-old TikTok dance girl makes more money than their parents, and it kind of like
I think psychologically also it fucks with like people in their development stage if that's what's happening because of technology, and then that it's going to be interesting to see how like that generation that has grown up only like without knowing like with that technology, basically without knowing without having that disconnect, to see how that also evolves. Completely different also to mine. Like I think now you see, well, back in the days generations were a bit more spread out, maybe like oh, we were grown up in this part. Now it's already so different to when I look to my brother who's 21, like what platforms he's used or he's using or he grew up on with. And then TikTok is already something where I'm like a bit like, that's
for the young guys.
Yeah, so there's I think it's changing way quicker now as well.
Yeah, it will be interesting where that will go in a long perspective. So if we go a little bit back to sustainability, if you would have the chance to put a sustainability project out there, which everyone in the whole world will be able to see or experience or use, what would the project be? An easy question, I know.
That's I mean, I probably would have to go something very basic, maybe just to, I mean, it has to be real, right? Like I can't dream up something that's not existent, you cannot. But a sustainability project that, for me, like the three parameters that I want to like tick with sustainability is the whole idea of, okay, if I do something, does it harm the planet? So the kind of like the environmental impact. So if not, then that's a great part. Like, let's tick that box. And then does it improve the livelihood of the human kind, let's say? Like, so is there a social component where it actually adds on or it improves how we conduct our lives or how we behave? And then if these 2 points are ticked, then that would be amazing. And then if you can make that sustain itself through economics, like through, okay, we have an exchange and someone pays for it, then that's the ideal version for me for sustainability. So like those two, but like the 2 points of environmental and social impact, that's for me where you need to create that value. And then the economics part, for me, sometimes I see it more as an add-on to it, where you go like, okay, if it's great on both parts, then you have to make it sustain, then you bring in the economic component. So it would be something, if that's a project, it would be something about, let's say, energy efficiency, for example, or like how can we source sustainable energy, but that would be maybe too much on the climate part. So I don't know, really. Like you have to. I think the most difficult part really is the social component, because it's so different for people what they value as good or what they think is great for them. It's very subjective, and that's. I think that's the tricky part for me to figure out how a global project what that would be. What would it be for you? Do you have one?
No, it's not purely sustainability. For me, my project is this using the language of business to change the world. That's my whole vision perspective.
Right.
And sustainability for me is baked into that.
Yeah. I think that's what we do with the XYZ playground. That ties into the social component for me in a big way of being like, okay, let's bring as many people as possible into this boat of talking about this topic of changing the world and getting the insights of people and get people thinking, get people reflecting, and hopefully making a positive mind shift, or just making a positive change and moving something forward. And if we get even one person who thinks a bit more sustainable out of that, that's already like a winning situation.
Yeah. If we slowly getting to an end, where do you think you will be in a year from now? I know it's always a kind of stupid question, but especially for young people.
It's I think physically I'll still be here in Copenhagen, but I don't even want to put my foot down. But I know it can totally change. But so physically, I would say still Copenhagen, because I really like that city.
Yeah.
In a year, like more on a personal level, I would love to be in a space of more clarity in where I want to go, or which projects I'm gonna focus on, because that's currently something where I'm still a bit like dabbling, and that's exciting and exploring a lot of things. But for me, at a certain point, I'm still gonna learn that from you, maybe, of how you can run a couple of businesses and still manage. But I'm not there at
not that yet. Hard.
And so I hope to just be further, like feeling more forward than I feel right now. Just if I can look back and say, yeah, I progressed in like the right direction. Like, looking back, that would be already a winning part. And maybe like less Corona and being able to party again. Stuff like that.
That's a good perspective. I love the part of learning, because that's really something which helps you to grow going forward. So what are the things you think other people who are not having your background should look up, should like read, should follow?
A book that I thought was super interesting, that isn't maybe even tied so much into innovation directly, but it's the Daniel Kahneman book about like thinking fast and slow. For me, that was just I'm a sucker, first of all, for any psychological or like behavioral economics book. I think that's quite interesting, just to understanding how we as people behave and how we're like flawed from just a system wise, like how we build up. And I think that's humbling to know, and it gives just so much, like it gives you so much peace of mind, and it eases you as well in wherever you are really in life right now. And like anyone, I think that's a great book to read for anyone in any field, really, just to understand yourself better and how you work. And it's written in a way also that it's like you don't have to be a psychological expert or like need to know a lot beforehand to understand what's happening. I think if I had to give a recommendation for a book, that's the one I would suggest.
So where can people find you? How can people reach out to you?
Oh, yeah. So people can reach out to me over several social channels, really. Either or on LinkedIn. That's my, like if it's anything connected to projects, the ones that I mentioned with, and just wants to get a chat or wants to reach out, wants to collaborate, just hit me up on LinkedIn. That's Johannes Neft. And then otherwise, you can. That's really actually the only social channel. If you want to see what's happening in my daily life, sometimes I post something on my personal Instagram. That's Joker, but if you want to get it, yeah.
The work world is
life.
in LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, it's more like the actual, like that's what I'm actually like work on, and then my Instagram I haven't touched in 3 years now. And sometimes when I post on my stories, it's you either know that I'm bored at the moment, and that's why I post something, or I just got inspired to share something in my story. Actually, no, I have a Instagram channel. It's called Neft Brothers, where my brother and I share. We do trips together, outdoor trips, and that's definitely a channel you should follow if you're into outdoors, any outdoor activities and sports. So check that out.
That's cool. Cool, Joe. Thank you very much for being on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Jens, for having me. It was really nice talking about it.
Looking forward to follow you on your journey as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical.